Do you know what really sucks? Is sitting down to edit your project and realizing that you have gaps in your coverage or shots missing. You need to have a really good, specific, and detailed shot list. Head over to filmmakersecrets.com/shot list, SHOTLIST, to get a killer shot list template along with some training where I show you step by step exactly how to use it.
And that's what we wanted to do is find somebody kind of from that time period, from the 80s or 90s, that was like a household name. I could easily lie about this and stuff, but I'm not when I say like from the get-go, we were like, wouldn't that be dope if we got Will Wheaton?
Filmmakers have the power to evoke emotion, inspire thought, and drive universal change in this world. So how does a filmmaker thrive in an environment that is almost intentionally designed to bring you down? That is the question, and this podcast reveals the answer. What's happening, filmmakers? It's George VK. Welcome to Filmmaker Secrets podcast, episode number 13. I'm so excited to welcome my guest, Jimmy Weber, aka Jimmy the Ghost, who is an award-winning filmmaker, editor, musician, visual effects artist extraordinaire. I'm super excited to catch up with him because the very first film that I was actually acting in was called Below the Basement, directed by Jimmy Weber. So Jimmy, go ahead and say what's up to our filmmakers and reveal the one filmmaker secret that you've been keeping from us.
Well, hello. First off, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And my name is Jimmy Weber. And first off, let me say I'm by no means an expert by any means. You know, I've only been doing this for, probably 10, 15 years by now. So, but my secret is that I try to do it all, if you will. And as you, when you were introducing me, I tried to do, visual effects, music composition, writing, directing, editing, just anything that I can try to get my hands on and learn about and do. I try to do it and not just like learn about it or be able to do it for my film. But when I'm not making movies, I'm continuing to practice and work at that craft. So that is my secret.
You know, when you answered that question in our sort of preliminary conversation, you mentioned that it's some of the more expensive aspects of filmmaking that you try to take on to cut down on the budget. Can you kind of touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't necessarily that way by design, but it kind of worked out that way by luck. But what I've learned over, my career is that learning how to do visual effects, motion graphics, editing, kind of anything in that post-production world, color grading, you name it, just anything where you're quote unquote sitting at a computer with your film, just kind of editing it versus being on set, working with actors, working with lighting technicians, that sort of thing, that whole post-production realm. The more you know and the more you can do, the better, because that is one of the most expensive areas of filmmaking. Same with music production. Music production may not be the most expensive, and it certainly isn't difficult to find great musicians out there. There are plenty of, when I say they're a dime a dozen, I do not mean that in a, to say that they're bad or, you know what I'm saying? There are so many amazing musicians out there who are willing to work with you and all that stuff. But that being said, it can be tricky because if you are a type of filmmaker like myself, who usually doesn't have money and doesn't have a lot of funds, it's so hard to ask an artist that you greatly respect to be like, hey, do you want to spend like 6 months working on this with me? And I'm not going to pay you anything. And it's going to be really hard. And I don't really have a direction for this. So you're going to have to figure this out on your own. And, and so if you can do that on your own, or even kind of just build, to the point where you can make the quote unquote, the demo tracks, what you're looking for, and then give that to a musician. Just anything that you can do in those regards, I think is just huge. And we found has just saved us so much time and so much money. We just wrapped up our film Rent-A-Pal. And when we were doing the deliverables, the legal work was just so much easier with the music, for example, because we didn't have to, go and secure all the rights to all these different artists or whatever. I was able to just sign all the documents myself and send it all off. So anyway, that's that.
Amazing. That's amazing. So Jimmy, take me back, way back, and think about your life as a movie. What was that inciting incident, that plot point one, that gave you the calling to create films, to be a filmmaker, to serve an audience, like a particular audience that you've obviously chosen, sort of the horror realm of filmmaking, which I appreciate, and I condone you for that. So take me way back to that moment. Describe what was happening and what got you that spark.
Totally. Yeah. So I've always, since I was a kid, like everybody and stuff, I've always been into movies in general. And I've always been into like horror movies. My mom got me into horror movies and stuff, but I just always kind of looked at them as movies, like I was never really into Star Wars. I was always into Terminator 2, and all that stuff. But like, I never really thought about making movies. And I was a musician. When I was in high school, I was in a punk band, and that's what I just thought I was going to do. And, but it was my senior prom. I went, I like recently broken up with my girlfriend or something. I don't know what it was, but I went with a friend of mine. She was a really great person, a great friend of mine. And so I was like, hey, do you want to go see a movie before prom? Cause we had never really hung out, outside of school. So we were like, let's go see a movie or something. And so I was like, let's go see, of course it was me. I was like, let's go see House of a Thousand Corpses, like that would be great, And in all honesty, I think the reason I thought of that is because like I saw some kid like in a class that day was like, I just saw this movie. I was called House of a Thousand Corpses. And like, it's just the most messed up thing. And I was just like, what is this movie? And so she was like, what, do you want to go see a movie this weekend? I was like, yeah, or something like, let's go see House of a Thousand Corpses. You remember Paul? He was saying it's awesome or something. So we went and saw it, and we saw it at this megaplex. And it was like a Friday night, and this is not to speak ill of because it's one of my favorite movies ever, spoiler, but there was nobody there. Like there was not like, not like there was like 5 people there or whatever. It was like she and I walked in, and we were the last 2 people to walk into that theater. You know what I mean? And we were like the only 2 people sitting in that theater. But I'll just never forget like watching that movie. And if you like, I'm sure if anybody were just like watch it now and they've never seen it before, it's nothing special or whatever. But there was just something about it at the time, for me at least, where I saw that and just the combination of everything. And maybe it's because Rob Zombie was a musician. And I've always been a huge Rob Zombie musician fan. So maybe it was that. But there was just something about it where just seeing it all together, it was like I just saw like my life in front of me, and I was just like, this is it. Like, this is what I want to do. I just want to do this. Like, I want to, like, he's making music, he's making movie, he's doing like, it's all, everything he's doing is all in it. Like, this is what I want to do. And I think that's where, kind of wanting to make the music for the movie, wanting to do the visual effects for the movie, wanting to edit the movie, it kind of came from that, where, the word auteur or whatever, however you pronounce it, gets thrown around, and a lot of people look down on that or whatever. And I don't have one thought on it one way or the other. Write the thing, shoot the thing, edit the thing, make the music for the thing, just do the whole thing. It's really fun. So anyway, that's what got me into it. It's House of a Thousand Corpses. That's my movie. That one.
Right on. I love your spirit, Jimmy. You're so amped about filmmaking, which is how all filmmakers should be. And especially the part about you talking through the whole process, like you are so close to every aspect of filmmaking that I think a lot of times for filmmakers, it's intimidating, right? Like the one-man band, you having to really know all kinds of art forms to then collaboratively bring them all together into a nicely packaged, finished film. What's your process all the way from idea development through pre-production, actual shooting, and then post-production with all of these elements interweaving? Do you think about music from the get-go? Do you envision your film as you are developing your idea? Just kind of talk me through the overarching process that you go through.
Definitely. Yeah. So the way I work is kind of, it's all in one, so I'll never, if I'm writing a script, I'll never be like, oh, that might be a cool music idea. No, don't follow through with that. You're writing the script right now. If I'm writing a script, I'm like, that'd be a cool music idea. I'll shove the, computer aside, like pull out the keyboard, and like pull it up, and blah, blah, blah. And, I love cloud, so cloud computing, so whether it's Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever. And so I'll just, whenever I start to get like an idea, I'll make a folder, and call it that idea. So whether it's a movie idea or a commercial, whatever. And then just whenever you make a piece of music, put it in there. You write something, you put it in there. You draw something for it, you put it in there. And you just start collecting these things. And it's gotten to the point now, I've been doing that for like literally like 15 years, and I try to come up with like 3 or 4 ideas a week. So I just have like hundreds and hundreds of folders and projects. And of course, 90% of them go nowhere. But what's cool about that though is it is with so much to keep in focus and so much to keep organized. If you can try to keep it literally organized in like either a digital way or an analog way where you literally have folders and stuff, what's cool about that is if I save it in a Google Drive folder, I'm like, okay, save there. And now I'm not thinking about it. I'm not worried about it because I know it's there. And then it frees up my mind to now go work on this other part. And then whenever I'm like, well, I should go back and work on that other thing, I'll go back to that other thing and it's all there. You know what I mean? So anyway, all that is to say is that it sounds like a lot, but the more you keep it organized, the easier it feels.
Are you Google's biggest customer?
I gotta think so, man. I got so much stuff. We have John and I. He wrote and directed Rent-A-Pal, which I produced and did the music for, and all that stuff. He's one of my creative partners and my main creative partner. And he and I just started using slides. Like we just started really getting into slides for like lookbooks and stuff like that, but also for outlining screenplays. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Story Clock notebook. There's a lot of advertisements for it on Instagram or whatever. It's great. John like swears, or I don't know if he swears by it or whatever, but he just thinks that way. Like he can just sit down at the Story Clock and just knock stuff out. And you know what I mean? Like he made this like Google slide thing where each like piece like goes. Anyway, so all this is to say, yes, I like to think that we are definitely Google's biggest customers.
So Story Clock, you're talking about sort of the circular structure of basically any story where something happens, let's say the 15 mark, and it'll probably come around again towards, 15 minutes to go in the film. And so there are all these parallels that happen throughout the story structure to really kind of wrap it up into a nice film where all the events are interplaying with each other. Can you talk just quickly about that? Because I think a lot of filmmakers are not aware of that type of storytelling. Absolutely. So basically, you can even boil it down simpler, where it's just a simple way of outlining a film or a story. And you do it in a circular way where if you think of the beginning and the end, kind of at the 12 o'clock, you can, basically fill out your story. And so kind of the middle of the movie would be 6 o'clock. And so what I love about it is that if I just see a white page, I'm just thinking about that as this like endless, vast void that can just go anywhere. And it's like, how do you think of a beginning, middle, and end of this? It's like looking into an empty field and it's like, find your way through. And it's like, whereas the Story Clock, it reminds you like, okay, well, if this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, there's not much more room left. Like we got to wrap this up, And so like, and that's what I really like about, but like you're saying, you lay out all those pieces and you get it in an organized way. And then when you start to connect the dots on where they appear on a clock and how that fits symmetrically and stuff, you can start to re-outline, rejigger your outline based on that. And you can come up with these really amazing parallels. So it's a really interesting way of thinking of stories. And if you don't already have a process, it's definitely one to look into. That's so amazing that you mentioned that, because it's something that I've been thinking a lot about recently. And just to give you guys an example, if you're still a little bit confused, this is quite a concept, I think. If we think of the example, my favorite movie, The Fifth Element. So towards the beginning, when Corbin Dallas is lighting up his cigarette, he opens up his matchbox and there's 2 matches left. So he uses one. So now it's not really given that much attention. But then towards the end of the film, when, the climax of them being in the temple, the clock is counting down and, we're wondering, are they going to be able to save the world, or is everything going to just be ultimately evil, destroyed? And he pulls out the matchbox and there's 1 match left for him to activate the last stone of fire. So it's that perfect circle, the circular structure, or the clock story structure. That's amazing.
Exactly. And you can like literally do that with every character, because you can just write like on one part of the clock, like introduction to this character, and then you can literally have setups and payoffs for virtually every part of your movie. So it's just a really cool way of thinking about writing films. We've definitely been using that a lot for the projects we've been working on.
So good. So good. So let's take a step back a little bit. So you got this inspiration to become a filmmaker, and take me through that journey as you were geeking out on filmmaking and learning all the aspects with lighting, cinematography, storytelling, and figuring out, like, watching movies with a new lens, with a new eye of analyzing the stories and figuring out what works for you. What was the first film that you started to really develop and you thought, yes, I'm a filmmaker?
The one that I made, or one that I saw? I honestly, I swear it's not because I'm just on your podcast or whatever, but it was absolutely Below the Basement, the movie that you and I, or that we made and together. It was just you, me, Annie, excuse me, you, me, Annie, and Luke Sorge, Annie Elizabeth Baker, who's my producing partner. But before that, everything that we had made was essentially kind of like sketchy, kind of like almost like sketch humor. Like if you were to make like a sketch horror film or whatever, I don't know, but it just wasn't serious. And I think that's because I wasn't taking myself seriously. And for whatever reason, actually, in all honesty, I've now that I'm thinking about it and we're sitting here talking about it, one of my professors, shout out Dave Liban, he sat me down one day and he was like, "Hey man, I think you're a really good filmmaker. I think you're really talented. And I think it's really obvious that you're going to be doing this forever. So I think you should start taking this more seriously. I think you should, and I think a lot of people could have taken that like the wrong way or whatever. But I really appreciated it at the time because that's what I needed. Cause I was just like, I don't know. I just didn't have the confidence, And so to have like the guy who was my teacher or whatever at the time be like, "Hey, I think you're really good at this. You should take it more seriously." It was like, okay, done, And so I wrote Below the Basement. And for those who haven't seen it and stuff, it's just this little, 5-minute, 6-minute short film about 2 brothers who are trapped in their crawl space, kind of, which is working as like a makeshift bomb shelter because like some natural disaster happened. And these 2 brothers are trying to figure out if they're going to like get out of there, be stuck there forever or whatever. And it's kind of interesting because since that movie and since then, the main theme that was really stuck with us is that like we had no idea if it was going to work, and it felt really dangerous because everything that we had been doing at that time was kind of like sketch based or like silly. And this was like, hey, let's try to make something that's actually like really serious. And we're like, man, if this thing like sucks, like, won't that be so embarrassing? And it's like, oh, I don't know. It's like, maybe we just won't show anybody. It's like, okay, well, if it sucks, we just won't show anybody. And so like, literally, like when we made that movie, it was just like literally the 2 of you. And then it was me and Annie. And that was it. Like literally, there was no other crew members.
Bones, no.
Yeah. Like it was just like, that was it. And it looks that way and it sounds that way. You know what I mean? Like, but what was dope though is that like, because you guys were so serious at the time, you and Luke, you're such a great actor. Luke's such a great actor. And
I'll give you $20 later.
Yeah, right. But for real though, it was funny because up until that point, everybody who had been in our movies at that point was like literally just a friend who were like, hey, do you want to be in our short film this weekend? And they're like, no. And we're like, please. And they're like, okay. And so you'd be like, all right, this is what you're doing. And they're like, okay, you know, whereas you guys were like, okay, so what's my character like? And you're like, shit, like you guys care about this stuff? Okay, yeah, we'll give it to you, you know? And so like, and that's when we started really learning like, okay, maybe we'll start hiring real actors now going forward, you know, and stuff. But yeah, that just really launched us from there. And so every movie we've made since, we've always kind of felt like we're onto something good. If while we're making it, we're like, dude, I have no idea if this is going to work. And we're like, but that's the way it felt with Below the Basement. All right, let's do this. You know what I mean? So yeah. So anyway, so all that is to say is Below the Basement. Sure.
That's amazing. You know, that makes me think of this concept. Like you have to suck at first. You have to suck so much and you have to continue to suck until you don't suck so much anymore. You actually get good at the craft. But I think a lot of times what stops filmmakers or people that want to become a filmmaker from actually producing work is that perfectionism, you know, but it's important to realize that you have to take the first step and your first project is going to bomb. It's going to be terrible. It's very rare for a first-time filmmaker to come out with a successful piece. So that's amazing.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something that I keep kind of at the forefront of my, like, I kind of don't, and maybe this is a bad thing. Maybe this is, you know, I don't know, but on my, you know, I kind of like keeping our older work like on our website and stuff, kind of warts and all, you know, like the rough edges where there's so many, like, you know, Below the Basement or whatever. I'm like, man, I don't know what I was doing with this color grade. Like this blue, like this is like, I don't know what I was doing with the blacks there, you know? And it's like, sure, I could go and like probably find the old footage and, you know, do the, you know, Snyder cut it or whatever, you know what I mean? Like make like the ultimate version of Below the Basement. But I'm kind of like, nah, man, like, let's just show the progression. You know, I kind of love like when you love a band, you know, you go and listen to their records and they like get progressively better. And it's weird too, because like, you know, when I think of like Tarantino, you go and watch Reservoir Dogs, you get like, it's not like Reservoir Dogs is some crappy movie. You know what I mean? I think that movie's a masterpiece. And it's like, that was his first shot out of the gate. So like, you know, we have so many of those in our minds of the, you know, like, you know, I just watched Promising Young Woman last night. I'm pretty sure that was her first feature film. You know, I mean, it's just like, that thing is a masterpiece, like masterpiece. You know what I mean? Like, and if you think that you're going to make that movie going out, no way. Like, you know, and so like my first movie, Eat, like I watch it now. It's been like, when did that movie come out? You know,
probably 7
years ago. My God, terrible. You know, terrible producer. But whenever that movie came out, no, but like I watch Eat now and I haven't watched it forever, but when I do watch, I'm like, oh man, I would do that differently. I would do that differently. I would do that differently. But I kind of, I don't know, it's like a child or so. You just watch it. You're just like, hey man, that's the way it is. I love it. I'm going to knock it. I'm going to do it better on the next one. And the next one, you do it better on the next one, you know? So I'm just a big believer in that for sure.
Beautiful. Yeah, I really want to get to talking about Rent-A-Pal, but I have one more question for you, Jimmy, about sort of, you know, you growing up as a filmmaker, as a storyteller. What has been one of your biggest roadblocks in terms of getting your productions or getting your films actually produced? And how did you overcome those roadblocks?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, the money thing is always a huge deal. And so, like with my first feature film, the way we financed that is like, I literally went and made political commercials in Washington, D.C., and they pay like an absurd amount of money to people who make political commercials for some unknown reason. But I, you know, figured that out. So I went and all the money I made doing that, put it towards that. You know, John, he financed Rent-A-Pal with his own money that he used from basically building a company for like 10 to 15 years, having the equity to buy himself out of it, and then using all of that money and gambling it on his film. You know what I mean? So I wish I could say that like we found investors and all that stuff. But before we made those features, we made incubator, which is, a $5,000 film, which is by no means a small amount of money. I really wish I had $5,000 currently. You know, but it was still, that's way more manageable than a feature. And what's crazy is that short film, which we made, I think in 2007, or God, I should have looked these dates up before coming on here. I'm so sorry, but I do know, or 2011. So that's when we made Incubator, was 2011. So because we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary, which is insane.
That's right.
But we still get emails, we still get, first off, we still get festivals that ask if they can screen Incubator. And we still have people that, it's not like once a month or anything like that, but, relatively frequently we'll get an email from somebody, in a really, at a studio or someplace, and they'll be like, "Hey, I stumbled across your short film Incubator. It's really cool. What do you guys got going on?" And it's like, holy cow, and that kind of rarely happens with Eat, my first feature film. You know what I'm saying? So, there is a lot of power to making a kick-ass, short film. Not to say that the movie I made is kick-ass, but, that's just to say you don't need to go out there and gun for a feature. Like if you make a really cool short film, that's going to catch a lot of eyes. So anyway, I don't know if that helps.
No, that's brilliant, because it's a way to come up with a proof of concept that you can actually do the thing that you're selling, that you're going to be able to do to investors or, potential outside people that are going to sponsor your film for the actual production, for the actual making of it. Awesome. Okay. So we've talked about the past. Let's move on to the present. Rent a Pal. Talk to me about the sort of conception of that idea, who was all involved in the development, and how did it go?
Yeah. So, basically, I forget when it was, but, of course, because I've been terrible with the dates here, but it was, I want to say it was like 2015, 2016. John he hit me up and he's like, "Hey man, I wrote a screenplay. I wrote it in like 2 weeks. I've had this idea for a while, about this guy and all this stuff." And then he saw a video online where he was like, "That kind of concept just works perfectly for this." And so kind of out of that came Rent a Pal. And so so it was John's script, and it was kind of like, the way it was at the time is John had gone through a lot personally. And he basically was like, "I wrote this script. I've got the money to make it. I don't know if I'm ever going to make another movie again. I don't know what's going on, but like, you and Annie are my best friends. Let's make this movie together." And it was just like, high five. Let's do it. You know what I mean? And so that's really what Rent a Pal was. And what's dope is that kind of every step since then has been this like magical like thing. It's just been such a cool story. Like every single person involved from top to bottom. Like if you watch Rent a Pal and you watch the credits and all that stuff, every single person in there is just so cool. Everything worked out magically, and it was just really fun. And that includes, like, for example, with Rent a Pal, just for people who haven't seen it, it's about a kind of an incel lonely dude who's taking care of his mother with dementia. And it takes place in 1990. And so back in the day, there was these like video dating services. And so he signs up for his video dating service, and he's just striking out left and right. And he's been doing it for months. And while at the video service, he finds this weird tape called Rent a Pal, and it's, you plug it in, and it's like literally somebody will like ask questions, sit there silently for, a few seconds while the other person's supposed to like answer. And then so they'll be like, "What's your name?" "That's a cool name." You know what I mean? And, and so, but then after a while, like the tape kind of starts talking to him, we don't know if the tape's, yada, 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 and all this stuff. So what was cool about it though, is that like from the conception of it, we were like, when John was like, "Hey, I got this idea for a movie. Like, I think this would be really cool. What do you think about that?" And I was like, he's like, "Do you think this would be cool?" And I was like, "I think that'd be really cool." And we started talking about how the villain, for example, the person who's on the TV, we could just have that person be on the TV the entire movie, we could have that person come to town for like 2 days. We can shoot that person for 2 days and then be done with it. So if we're just doing that, we might be able to get like a star, or somebody that we, loved growing up or whatever. And that's what we wanted to do is find somebody kind of from that time period, from the 80s or 90s, that was like a household name. And it's just funny because like, I could easily lie about this and stuff, but I'm not when I say like from the get-go, we were like, we're gonna get dope if we got Will Wheaton. Like that would just be so cool. Like, because, I'm a huge Star Trek The Next Generation fan. Annie and I, we really like the Big Bang Theory, or parts of the Big Bang Theory. So we love, his reoccurring character on there and all that stuff. So we were like, Will Wheaton would be so great. And we were like, how the hell would you get Will Wheaton, And so like a friend of ours hooked us up with our casting director. We hit up our casting director with like kind of like a dream list with Will Wheaton being at the top and stuff. And literally it was like, I know Will Wheaton's agent. We're like, oh my God. And so we were like sent the script off to Will Wheaton, and as he told us later, he was like, yeah, the amount of money you guys offered me was like really little compared to what I normally do. But like, I really like the script. And so I just wanted to do it. And I thought it'd be really fun. And it was just like, oh, thank you, Jesus. Like, you know what I mean? And like, thank you, Will. So,
it's interesting because I think a lot of times actors, especially actors that are in TV, they want to be in feature films. They want to be in narrative work that they really can sink their teeth into the character instead of doing the same thing, day in and day out. I've noticed that with, a couple of features that I've shot. So it really only takes you that, first step, just ask. The worst thing that's going to happen is they'll say no.
Totally. And that was the thing too, is that like, he was at the top of our list, right? So we kind of didn't want to like screw that up because were like, he's at the top of our list. So we kind of made like another, like other people, and I won't say who they are, but other people. And no joke, we did the whole thing where we like signed up for IMDb Pro, went and typed those people's names in, found their agent's information, called those people up, and like we have this on video, and it's horribly embarrassing. And I don't recommend you do this because we learned like, oh, maybe this isn't how you do it. But call them up and like literally where, it's like, hi, is this beep agent? And she was like, yeah. And we're like, hi, well, my name is Jimmy Weber and I got this movie that I'm trying to make and like wondering if like we could, and like literally she just goes like, well, it's lunchtime here. And we're like, oh, okay then. Well, message received. We will never call back. That what I say, you know what I mean? Yeah, so it was like, okay, I don't think that's the way that goes, So we started looking around. But yeah, you kind of have to stumble, you can't be rude, you know what I mean? You gotta be very like, hi, I'm sure this isn't how this goes, but I was just wondering in case it is how it goes, can blah, 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 blah. And then they usually say like, this isn't how it goes. And you're like, okay, I shall show myself out the door now. You know what I mean? And like, as long as you do that, you'll find your way.
Amazing. So I'd love to hear, just through the actual production and post-production, because you were involved as a producer, as a music composer and visual effects artist. Just kind of talk me through that process and how everything worked out, how long it took, just kind of some statistics, if you will.
He like finished the script and we were like, he was like, hey, I have the money for this. Let's make this movie. And then 3 years later, it was like literally in theaters, you know what I mean? So that was crazy. And my kind of role on it, which was really fun, was like kind of as the producer, and then kind of the other things that fell from that is kind of at the time I was just like John's right hand man, the writer, director, editor, John Stevenson. And so just every single day, basically we just wake up and FaceTime each other or whatever, and just work on the movie. And, it was really a 3-4 person effort. It was between, me, John, Annie, and then Brandon Fryman, who's also a production designer and producer on the film. And kind of between the four of us, we, just whatever was needed, we would do. And so that's kind of where like a lot of this stuff would come up. And so, we'd be, working on stuff, and John would be like, hey, this would be a cool music idea. And I'm like, that's great. And so I go and like make that. And then like we get together at a location scout, and I'd be like, hey, remember that music idea we were talking about? And I'd give them the music idea and listen to it in the car. And we're like, hey, we're filmmakers, high five, you know what I mean? Sort of thing. And, it's just stuff like literally we were on a good anecdote is like we were on set and we shot at Skate City, Aurora, I believe. And they were so cool, and the place looked great. And their only thing was like, hey, do you mind not having like our logo and Skate City, just like in the film, just what, which is totally cool. I was like, yep, no sweat, So we made these logos for Skate Land, and like all this stuff, Skate Land. And then while we were shooting it, we get this like huge wide shot, and it's like the marquee wide shot of the film. But like we didn't have like intricate storyboards or whatever. So it was kind of like set up on, at the moment. Our DP Scott Park goes and sets it up as this big wide shot, and it just perfectly, frames Skate City in frame, and then has the two of them below there. And like, this is after we filmed the whole skating scene all day, like we've been shooting for like 10 hours, all that stuff. And, John's like, Jimmy, do you think you can digitally, remove this with visual effects, And I just like, yeah, oh, totally. Which is like, when you know how to do this stuff, like you can get away with this stuff. And so I was literally just like glance at the monitor, and I was just like, sure, like, I'm sure we can. And of course, like, that was one of those things, like you said, like 6 months later, it's like, okay, let's do that shot. And I go to sit down, like, how the hell am I going to do this? Like, what was I thinking? Like, oh my God, but, I powered through it, and, there's no deadline on the movie or anything like that. We're not paying anybody because I'm the one who's doing it. So we have all the time in the world, all that stuff. And the production triangle, good, fast, and cheap, like we don't have to worry about, the fast at all. So we're just concentrating on good and cheap. You know what I mean? And we got it figured out, and it worked, and it looks great in the movie. And what's funny is like, I don't even really remember now that it was a pain. It's only when like John, he's like, do you remember how we just kind of like sprung that on you? And I'm like, oh yeah, that was wild. I'm glad we figured that out, but when you kind of like, if you just look at it with that attitude, just like, I'm a visual effects artist, then whenever they throw something at you, you're like, no, I can fix it in post. Like, like that's it's considered a bad stereotype to say, we'll fix it in post on set. Well, I'm going to know how to fix it in post on set. So if you go with that attitude, and you can really get through a lot of problems. And
then you end up adding a week of post onto your schedule.
Yeah, or like 6 months, Let's be honest about it. Like, again, the production triangle, that fast part, it gets real slow, and you add in doing a day job on top of this because, it's all self-financed and stuff. So yeah, it gets real slow. But,
Moral of the story, filmmakers, production design is important.
Exactly. And again, that's, that comes with after I have no doubt that Brandon Fryman was also pulling his hair out at that time. Where he's like, why did I would have built a sign? I would have built a sign with my bare hands if you had told me.
Amazing. I can talk to you for hours about this and everything that you have coming up potentially. I'd love to hear about the actual distribution and exhibition process and kind of how that came about, because I think it's one of the more intimidating parts of the whole filmmaking process. There, I was speaking with a filmmaker, Krista Gano, and she talks about you have to close the circle of art. So the actual consumption of the art that you're making is so vitally important, but a lot of times it gets kind of tossed by the wayside, and then it's like on the back burner. Oh, we'll take care of it later. What was your plan for getting this movie seen by the masses?
Yeah, so it's crazy because that was like kind of primarily my job going into it. And one of the things that John kind of prefaced with me, he was like, he basically told me, he's like, I kind of just want you on, on set and kind of threw out this because I really respect your opinion on tone and what the movie will be like and stuff. But really at the end of this, you made Eat, and that movie got bought and sold and, was distributed. It's like, I want to get that done with this. Do you think that you can help me with that? So I was like, yeah. So, long story short is we have some sales agents, and to, spoiler or whatever, they're not really sales agents anymore. So I would say like, we're working with these guys, but they don't really do that anymore. So it's, you know, I feel bad to advertise them or whatever, but they're our friends, and JD and Rafi, and they are just you know, they've done so much for us. And so they were our sales agents for Eat, and they handled domestic and international. And they got us a great deal with The Orchard, who's now called, I believe, 1091. And they, you know, got us international deals and all that stuff. So when we were making Rent-A-Pal, and when we were finished with it, we basically, our plan was to basically get the film finished, get it all done. So it was looking good, because we didn't need to sell it at like a time, you know, like it wasn't like we need to sell it this fall because we're in debt. And, you know, if we don't pay back our investor, like blah, blah, blah. It was kind of like, hey man, this is the money that's going towards this movie. Whenever it gets made, you know, sort of thing. So, the plan was to kind of get it into what we considered, boom, this is the movie. It's done. Like, we're ready, put a bow on it. And we kind of did that, and we showed it to those guys, and we said, hey, would you guys be interested in selling this? And they're like, hey, we don't really sell movies anymore, to be honest with you. Like, we're just hardcore into production now, because they're like amazing film producers. They just put out, their Boulder Light Pictures. They, Jason Blum himself called them the next Blumhouse. Wow. They just put out a movie called The Vigil, which is just a freaking masterpiece, or excuse my French, but, amazing film. Highly recommend if you haven't seen The Vigil. But anyway, so they've just been so busy with film production that they don't really have time to do sales. But it was cool because, again, like I was saying, kind of all the serendipity stuff with Rent-A-Pal, they were like, we love this movie. And, you know, we've worked with you guys in the past, so we'll definitely help you out. Let's do this. You know, we'll kind of, you know, one last job, you know, if you will, like for the sales agency. And it was really, so the plan was to just take it to a film festival. So we were going to kind of each, you know, because the festivals are kind of, what are they, like quarterly or whatever, but they're kind of like in chunks. So kind of we're going to submit to the fall chunk, you know, try to get into like TIFF or something, or, you know, Fantasia or something like that. And actually, I think TIFF isn't, but neither here nor there. We're going to try to get into a big festival, and we're just kind of wait for when that submission stuff came up. And when it did, the pandemic hit. And so we were like, okay, who knows if there's ever going to be a film festival ever again. And it kind of, you know, it sucked in terms of like, oh God, like we're not going to be able to play this movie in film festivals, and like, oh gosh, like we won't be able to show our friends this movie. And that sucked. Like, don't get me wrong. But like, it was such an amazing position to be in at the time, where it was like staring at this pandemic and being like, holy cow, we have like a finished freaking movie that we can go and sell to somebody. Like, this is amazing. Like, yeah, I just couldn't be more thankful. And, you know, again, whole serendipity. So anyway, they, once the pandemic hit, and once studios and stuff were clamoring for content, and it kind of became known that this is, you know, people were going to be sitting at home for the next year and streaming, and everybody was trying to buy up stuff. JD and Rafi are like, hey, let's try to jump on this. And so basically just using their connections through past sales that they've done, they kind of created this little bidding war where, you know, they reached out to everybody and started getting offers. And then they kind of started, and they were keeping us, they're transparent about it all. And they got us, you know, our deal with IFC, and, you know, kind of came down to the final two people, and we landed with IFC Midnight. And IFC Midnight had been amazing. It was so cool. You know, they put us in 65 theaters nationwide during the pandemic, which was crazy. I mean, and when I say crazy, I mean, it's just like so amazing, you know, that they believed in us, and they believed in Rent-A-Pal, and they believed in our story. And so that was really cool. And then also Rafi, he hooked us up with the Exchange, and they are our international sales distributors or agents now. And they're kind of like a whole company now who their job is just to go and find us international sales. And they've been amazing. It's like, so they sold, Rent-A-Pal to Light Bulb Entertainment, for example, who runs like the United Kingdom distribution. And, like Light Bulb, they made this awesome DVD cover, that they like, I don't know if they set up like a shoot for it or if they just did it all Photoshop, but whoever made that or whatever, it was just so cool. It's just so cool. So that's been really fun to see. And, so yeah, we've been really, lucky on that, but yeah, so, IFC Midnight, man, if it wasn't for those guys, I don't know where we would be. And I don't know where we would be without Blue Light Pictures, because, those guys are great too. So it's cool. We have a lot of good people in our corner.
So many knowledge bombs, Jimmy. It's amazing. I can listen to you for hours, not even talk. I could just shut up and listen to you talk, because there's so many nuggets in there. And I hope you filmmakers are paying attention, because this is free advice from an amazing filmmaker. So congratulations again. My most important question right now is, where can I get an autographed copy?
Oh man, good question. Well, let's see. You can get Rent-A-Pal now in any major recent. We just walked into Best Buy the other day and got a Blu-ray. Which I saw that. Crazy. Yeah, so you can get it anywhere. Like you can get it online. It's being distributed through Shout Factory. We also did this really cool thing through Lunch Meat Magazine. They put out the movie on VHS. Like they actually put it out through like actual VHS. So that was really fun. That's awesome. But all of our, you can find all of our information at prettypeoplepictures.com. That is our production company. And then you can always find all my stuff at jimmyweber.com. And that's Jimmy Weber with one B, Weber. So, yeah.
Perfect. What's next for you, Jimmy? Talk to me if you have any kind of potential projects happening. What are you working on?
Yeah. So after Rent-A-Pal, John, he's gotten a lot of attention, which is so exciting and well-deserved. And it's gone from him being like, hey, I don't know if I'm ever going to make another movie again. Let's do this and see what's going to happen, to holy crap, I have managers. I'm an actor now. He's just working all, which is so cool. So he and I, we've been working on various pitches and that sort of thing. And so we've been doing stuff that's been kind of taking up our time. This year, I'm going to try to get going on my next feature film. I don't know so much about like if I will get it like filmed this year, you know what I'm saying? But like this year, I'm going to, just really get the whole thing going. But since Eat came out, however long ago, as we determined, I've just been working on a bunch of different things. So I'm hoping to get my next project off the ground. So anyway, lots of cool stuff coming your way.
Beautiful. Okay. Last question for you, Jimmy. If, basically, what is my question? What is your desert island movie? So if you could only watch one movie for the rest of your life, what is it?
Man, that's tough. I mean, if I'm going to be on brand, like I would say House of a Thousand Corpses. And the thing is that like, in all honesty, I did watch that movie like one night every night, or I watched it once a night every night for all of October one time, when I was I freaking love that movie. So I'll take that movie. But since that's the easy on brand answer, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm taking Magic Mike XXL. That's
right on. Yeah. I was hoping you would say that.
And if anybody wants to know why, I got a 10,000 word essay on my website on why that movie is a masterpiece.
Beautiful. There you have it, filmmakers. Jimmy Weber, thank you so much for coming on the show. Again, check out all the links in the show notes. I really appreciate you giving me the time and all the amazing knowledge bombs you dropped. Thank you for coming on Filmmaker Secrets, Jimmy.
Oh man, George, thank you so much. And again, I'm no expert, but my gosh, I had so much fun talking to you today. It's so good to catch up. And thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. All right, filmmakers, it's George VK, and I'll catch you on the next one. If you like that, then you are going to love my Cine Racing Challenge. This is a 7-day filmmaking competition where your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to write
shoot, and edit a short 60-second film in just 7 days for your one chance to win with over $10,000 in prizes. So head over to cineracing.com. That's cineracing.com to get registered. Spots are filling up fast and the timer is ticking before the next Cine Racing Challenge launches. So be sure to head over to cineracing.com right now to get registered. I'll see you over there.